So let's chant in to start with. Our penetrating and perfect dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. We started, we left off with the way of the Bodhisattva at verse 54. I'm going to back up two verses. I want to just read, I'm going to read between 52 and 69, which is it's a normal break. I'm starting with 52 only because Pema Chodron groups 52 to 54 together. So let's read that, and I'm just going to read the text first, and then we'll go back verse by verse and take a good look at it. Starting with verse 52, because the mind is bodiless, it cannot be destroyed by anyone. Because of mind's attachment to the body, this body is oppressed by pain. Scorn and hostile words and comments that I do not like to hear, my body is not harmed by them. What reason do you have, O mind, for your resentment? The enmity that others show me, since in this or future lives it cannot actually devour me, why should I be so averse to it? Perhaps I turn from it because it hinders me from having what I want. But all my property I'll leave behind, while sins will keep me steady company. Better far for me to die today than live a long and evil life, however long the days of those like me. The pain of dying will be all the same. One man dreams he lives 100 years of happiness, but then he wakes. Another dreams an instant joy, but then he likewise wakes. And when they wake, the happiness of both is finished, never to return. Likewise, when the hour of death comes round, our lives are over, whether brief or long. Though we be rich in worldly goods, delighting in our wealth for many years, despoiled and stripped as though by thieves, we must go naked and with empty hands. Perhaps we'll claim that by our wealth we live, and living gather merit, dissipating evil. But if we are aggressive for the sake of profit, won't our gains be evil, all our merits lost? And if the aim for which we live is thereby wasted and undone, what use is there in living thus, when evil is the only consequence? And if, when people slander us, we claim our anger is because they injure others, how is it we do not resent their slander when it's aimed at someone else? And if we bear with this antipathy because it's due to other factors, why are we impatient when they slander us? Defilement, after all, has been the cause of it. Even those who vilify and undermine the sacred doctrines, images, and stupas are not proper objects of our anger. Buddhas are themselves untouched thereby. And even if our teachers, relatives, and friends are now the objects of aggression, all derives from factors as we have explained. This we should perceive and curb our wrath. Beings suffer injury alike, from lifeless things as well as living things. So why be angry only with the latter? Rather, let us simply bear with harm. Some do evil things because of ignorance. Some respond with anger, being ignorant. Which of them is faultless in such acts? To whom shall error be ascribed? Instead, why did they act in times gone by that they are now so harmed at others' hands? Since everything depends on karma, why should I be angry at such things? This I see, and therefore, come what may, I hold fast to the virtuous path and foster in the hearts of all an attitude of mutual love. So, that's the whole of it. Let's go back now and take a look at it. Actually, before I go there, any thoughts or comments just from reading the text? Okay. Pema Chodron talks about these first three verses as the essence of it being sticks and stones can break my bones. Hostile words are just hostile words. And she points out that if the person saying terrible things to you is speaking in a language you don't understand, you won't even be upset. So let's look at verse 654. Contempt and scorn that others show me now and in my future lives. This is Pima's translation, slightly different. Since none of it can bite or swallow me, why is it I am so adverse to it? And she says, scorn and contempt don't harm me. The dislike of others doesn't harm me. And we need to accept that others may not show us respect or find pleasure in us. As I read that, it dawned on me how often I know I do, and I know everybody does. We do, in fact, expect people to find pleasure in us. We're reasonable. We have, and yet we don't feel that way about other people. There are people we like, there are people we don't like, disagree with, and yet oftentimes we find in ourselves that expectation that, well, people should just understand me, like me, take pleasure in me. Going on to 55, she says, perhaps I turn from it because it hinders me from having what I want. But all my property I will leave behind, while sins will keep me steady company. In the first two lines, Shantideva suggests that at least part of the reason that we take issue with the negative words or attitudes of others is that we fear that they can be an obstacle to our material well-being. He then reminds us that no matter how much and what you've gained in this life, you can't take it with you. Though our karmic consequences, negative and positive, remain. Um, 656 then. Better far for me to die today than live a long and evil life. However great may be my length of days, the pain of dying will be the same. Another message about not taking it with you. There is a teaching that says that it is better to die today than to live a long but evil life. To this verse, Pelton suggests that this is not only related to the length of our life and things like killing and stealing, but he then goes on to talk about the different kinds of clinging to the six senses. And he literally cites 5 categories of wrong livelihood that come from the Ratnavali. I found these interesting. I had not run across these before. Attempting to secure a living by flattery. Number 2, hypocrisy. Number 3 is self-interested generosity. Number 4, putting forth one's status or position. And number 5 is indirect theft. Shantideva says that it's better to die now than to be engaged in these kind of activities and have a long life. Yes.
The one that you read was self-interest and generosity, or was that 2 different?
Hang on one second. Oh, here it is. Self-interested generosity. In other words, I'm giving a bunch of money so people will see me, or so I have my name on a building and everybody will remember me for years and years and years to come. That's self-interested generosity, from my standpoint at least. That's what it means. And of course, it can have any kind of self-interest involved in it, I would think. Anything else? Oh, there we go. 657 is one man dreams. One man dreams he lives 100 years of happiness, but then he wakes. Another dreams an instant joy, but then he likewise wakes. Peldon comments that when they wake up, whether it felt short or long, the happiness they experienced in enjoying the dreams won't come back. It's gone forever. And 658 then says, and when they wake, the happiness of both is finished, never to return. Likewise, when the hour of death comes round, our lives are over, whether brief or long. Whether our life has been long and pleasure-filled or brief and without much joy, the happiness that we've previously felt, whether it's long or short, is over. and can never return, just like waking from a dream. He then goes on to say, Shantideva then goes on to say, though we be rich in worldly goods, delighting in our wealth for many years, despoiled and stripped as though by thieves, we must go naked and with empty hands. I apologize, I lost my place. So, in the end, all of us die, whether our life is short or long. Most of us hope for, as Pima says, most of us hope for a long and happy dream and leave it at that. But if our long and happy dream is built on other people's suffering, the consequences of that will not be good. A short dream in which we shed destructive habits would be preferable, is her comment. No matter how many worldly goods we have or how many years we have taken pleasure of the senses provided by them, when we die, we go naked and empty-handed. Verse 60 says,
Before we go on,
yes, please.
I wanted to insert here what I hope might be helpful. Because, for instance, when we die, I think I've got a different translation, but so when we die, we go naked and with empty hands. Is that basically what your translation is saying?
I'm sorry, I only heard part of that.
Oh, read verse 59 again.
59? Now this is 59 out of the translation that Pima uses is, though we be rich in worldly goods, delighting in our wealth for many years, despoiled and stripped as though by thieves, we must go naked and with empty hands.
Okay. Because I think that's a line maybe we could try to get a sense of how this relates to Mahayana teaching in general.
Okay.
We must go naked and with empty hands. Based on the teachings of emptiness and no self, we are, so going naked and with empty hands is kind of rich imagery portraying our own innate emptiness.
Yes.
That's our nature. And so there's no escaping that. That is our true nature.
Mm.
And when we take on all these other, I'll call them societal goods, that this is what's truly valuable, we get that ingrained in us from a very early age, and everything in society is kind of pushing. But yet the truth always remains that we must go naked and with empty hands. This is the truth.
referring to
regardless of what
yeah, referring to our
things we might have. So this is kind of also the equality that we all have. We're all like this.
yeah.
So to make these distinctions between one and another is delusion, because we're all naked and empty hands. That's the great equalizer. That's why we talk about the world of discrimination, where we can make differences, but in the world of unity, of the absolute, there's no longer. We're all naked with empty hands. That's the ultimate truth.
Mm-hmm.
So the practice is to actually see that, not just to hear the words, but to really see that. Our nakedness and our empty hands. Empty hands, of course, speaks to the first and second noble truths. We see what we think we have in our hands, and we have to stop grasping onto it, because if we see the truth, there's really nothing there. It's just a fabrication. And the value that we attribute to it is just a fabrication. So where do we end up as a result of realization of this basic truth? Is in a world where all of a sudden there are no distinctions. We look around and everything is naked and with empty hands. And that's our starting point. What will we build up from that? We see what we build up from the world of fabrication and discrimination, and picking and choosing. That's clear. But what kind of world will we inhabit when everything is naked and empty hands? That's a rich topic for contemplation, because the contemplation is rooted now in reality. And it's a very different sense of things than we normally have. So in terms of what's being laid out in this section on patience, I think that's a very important consideration to get brought into this. It's really, we're talking about the emptiness of all things. And nakedness and empty hands are rich images for that. I think that can be helpful to us, which is why I wanted to stop there. Let's
I think
grab onto that, so to speak.
Well, and
and
I think you're saying this, but ultimately, this is all of these verses are pointing to that very end and expanding on various pieces of that.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure we got
and
we
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it just kind of maybe doesn't need as much commentary. But to find the core, that's really important.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Any other thoughts? Yes, James.
Yes, thanks. Good morning, John. So first, I guess a comment on the tech. I'm having a really good time hearing you. I mean, good time as in enjoyable, but it's easy to hear you, but I can't really hear other people speaking in the room all that well. So I wonder if that external speaker is out there and turned on.
It's out there and turned on. We have been having some issues with it. I apologize for that.
Okay, no worries. I just have found that when I turn up the volume of somebody speaking in the room, then I can hear it okay. All right. So my comment on the text and the reading is that in trying to understand it, it seems to be saying also that the ends don't justify the means.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Pema's comment is that using root in like attitude of ruthlessness for the sake of gain. Gather wealth in order to do virtuous deeds like building temples and feeding the poor. I think that's something that is kind of easy, at least for me, to fall into. So I'm wondering how to kind of make sure that my motivation is coming from the right place. I mean, there's obviously a lot of suffering in the world, a lot of controlling of messaging, and especially in our society, culture, capitalism, those who kind of own the message sort of can have power to do what they want. So I'm kind of wondering what attitude, what I guess way of acting is best to try to counter that, to act against those forces that have gotten power through ruthless means. The best I've been able to come up with is kind of checking my attitude, motivation, and action against the noble eightfold path, especially like right intention, right speech, maybe a couple others. So it's just kind of a question I've been pondering, wondering if you have any comments on that.
A couple extra, actually. Um, from my previous life as a psychiatrist, one of the things I know is it's these are never either or. Can you you can, of course, give money without asking that the building be named after you. But if you give money to charity or other things, I think ultimately you may feel good about it. You may feel like, you've done something good. I don't think that's negative, but ultimately it is understanding inside of you why you're doing that. And I think most of the time for me, those things come as I'm sitting. They can come at the time. I certainly have gotten better at seeing things that I don't like about myself as, I think, oh, yeah, well, I'm better than this, or I'm whatever, and catch myself at those things. But a lot of times, I think it's more when we're quiet and give ourselves time to think. And then if we find within that the motivation of compassion or other things that are there, and those become the primary driver, I think that's the difference. I think uh, that's that's how I would answer that, and I guess I would, um, in this case, also just ask whether Dean wants to. Do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, no, I think the fact that James, I give you a minute to turn your volume up. But I think referencing the Eightfold Path is very, very helpful to see how our entire practice actually addresses that. And maybe to be able to come to see how our entire practice addresses all things. But a good beginning is to have something that you're already working with, and to see, to have that reference point, whether it be the Eightfold Path or the Paramitas, any of these core guidelines that we'll find in various Buddhist teachings, how they are simply means to enable us to awaken, moment by moment, as we encounter the challenges of our daily life. So we could run through all 8 aspects of the Noble Path and see applicability there. So I would say really that that is the heart of practice. We do Zazen, I think, in order to bring ourselves into that mental state, so that we can see things more clearly. And then we can take these various tool sets that have been handed down through the ages, like the Eightfold Path, and we can use those to really help guide us in ways that aren't built up around our sense of an ego, of distinguishing between me and other beings, but rather they kind of have equanimity baked into them. So we can go through life with that perspective of equanimity, which is essentially, again, coming back to this sense of being naked and empty-handed. That's real equanimity. When you see that everywhere, how can you be anything but a practitioner of equanimity? There's nothing to base any different.
What? Yeah, Joe.
So I'm wondering with what Dean said and what James was talking about, and he pointed out, he used the word capitalism. Okay, I'll speak up. If everybody from coast to coast here in this country adopted the Four Noble Truths and the philosophies of emptiness and so forth, what would that society be like? Would capitalism still be able to exist? Will we still have space exploration and armies and navies and lawyers? And if everybody truly adopted these philosophies and wanted to live by them, and what would be incentives for people to want to be better? Supposedly, would the doctors and engineers still make more money than the plumbers and carpenters, and what would give people an incentive to want to drive forward and explore and experiment? I'm just wondering what all that would look like. I don't know if that's a question, and if it is, if it's a good one. But,
it may be a question. I'm not sure I have an answer.
I see a society more like a Tibetan society, who, as we know, was totally overrun by a society that didn't think that way. So what is in store for us as we spread the word and all become a nation like we'd like to see?
I suppose the first thought that comes to my mind is that no matter what religion there is, no matter what philosophy there is, no matter what psychology or science, we're still dealing with human beings. These are goals, but these things came about because of whether we're talking about the Buddha or Jesus or Muhammad, they saw human misery and human suffering, and said, this was their answer to how do we stop that. There are Muslim countries, Christian countries, Buddhist countries. It's never been like that. I mean, I understand what you're asking, and I've sort of had that question myself sometimes. But I think what we see growing out of this is human nature, humanity, and I don't know that now the issue around capitalism could be a difference. I mean, there we're talking about, but even then, I think it certainly could. We might find that there would be some kind of capitalist society where things are shared more evenly. I don't think it needs to be the way we practice it here. I mean, that's certainly, I think, what some of democratic socialism is about. But I don't know. That's my thought. I think that's purely a guess. If anybody else has any thoughts or ideas, please. Yeah, Aaron.
So one thing that comes to mind is, so we're talking about what the world would look like if everyone adopted the Four Noble Truths.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, what I'm thinking about is that Buddhism feels like it is very much focused on right now, all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I don't know about Islam, I don't know very much about it, but Judeo-Christianity, to me, one of the problems it poses for civilization, I feel like, is that it's really focused on this idea of like an afterlife. And I think that makes people disregard this world.
I agree.
In a lot of ways.
I agree.
That was just a thought I had.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Going back to the verses about not being able to take it with you when you die, right? We all die naked and, empty hands.
You have to speak up.
I think a lot of people are afraid of that. So they're operating out of fear of death and fear of that unknown. And so there's a clinging and a grasping to the material objects and power in the case of what's going on currently. And that feeds a cycle of accumulation and power needing further accumulation. And when James was talking about how to counteract that, I think in addition to practicing the Eightfold Path, and I think simply loving kindness and compassion, and recognizing that the people who are engaged in this are operating out of fear and delusion, and that they deserve our compassion. So loving kindness and sending love and acting out of love is a good way to, I think, respond to that.
Well, it's certainly one of the central tenets of what we believe. Mm-hmm. And the Dalai Lama has said, if he had to summarize his teachings in one word, it would be kindness. James.
Oh, that was a gratitude. Wow. Thanks for that.
Okay. Anything else? Okay.
Yeah, John, I was just going to comment that I think a lot of times the teachings point to changing ourselves first and foremost. And when we look at ourselves and our world differently, hopefully from a place of emptiness, then we start to influence those around us, whether it's our families or our friends or the person at the supermarket or whatever it is. We let someone go in line in front of us, or we let a car in our lane, or whatever it is. And so these small acts, I think, start to create a different vibration, if you will. And other people pick up on that, and then other people are less angry and they're more cooperative, and so forth. So, and then I think perhaps we have some models of looking at how a society might be different if we look at something like Plum Village, or look at some of the temples and how they interact and how their economies work, and all of those kinds of things. I think we can, see a different way or a different path. So I think it comes down to changing ourselves and then changing our immediate environment, the people in our lives, whomever we run across or encounter, and how we treat them. So I think, these, and then that has a ripple effect, whether it will change our entire society. I'm quite doubtful of that, but I think we can act locally, if you will.
The other thought that I had about that, as we were talking about this and coming back to Joe's original question, if we start and think about how the Four Noble Truths came about, and the fact that we live in delusion to start with, and it took the Buddha 6 years to figure this out, and he was the Buddha. It just speaks to me more about where we start at as human beings, and if we had a true, if we could do that, yes. And I think what we see is what Chris was getting at. If you look at places like Plum Village or other small places where people genuinely practice these things, it's totally different. But you don't see people flooding into Plum Village. I mean, few of us, those of us who think that's the right direction to go, yes. But there's something, I think much of humanity remains so deluded, and God knows I don't exclude myself from that, that I don't know, even if all of that were there, would that be enough? I don't know. I don't know. It would depend on each individual in a way. Because that's what we say. I mean, if Zen is about anything, it's about individual responsibility for your own life, your own thoughts, your own self. And if you start from that, people are human. So perhaps we'd be a whole lot better off, or perhaps we'd be in the same place we are now. That'd be my answer to your original question. I don't know any more than anybody else does, but go ahead.
Yes, it's about our individual, recognition of where we are, but it's also the vow we take to free all beings from suffering.
Yeah.
And to forego our own enlightenment until every other being is enlightened. So that step, I think, as simple as it is beyond the grasp of most people who are suffering from delusion and are wrapped up in that. To then step back and say, it's not just about me, that I'm no separate from any other person, that we're all interconnected and we're all in this together. That, I think people are so caught up in survival mode, and that's why people drive. You read about why people drive those big SUVs, is because if they get in a crash, they want to protect their children, their loved ones, and to hell with everyone else. If they kill 15 other people, but everyone in their car is safe, that's all that matters to them, because there's that sort of selfish, I'm protecting me and my own. And to go beyond that and say, well, actually, I need to protect every being, not just a human being, but every being in the universe. That's it. As simple as it is, that's a big lift.
Well, and
for those people who
Yeah.
are,
for all of us, it's just a matter of degree.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the self.
Yeah.
Goes back to all of us believe we have a self that's here. It's me. I'm here. And it's only in understanding that, yeah, you're you and you're here, but you're also connected to everything else, that this starts to make sense.
I
And
just thought it comes back to the 87th problem.
For those of us who may not know what the 87th problem is, would you?
Well, the 87th problem is in relationship to the 86 problems, which we all have. They're different in makeup, but they're the problems of our everyday life. The fact that people don't do what we'd like them to do. The fact that we're not getting paid enough in our job, working for next to nothing, and so on and so forth. My neighborhood's going to hell, they're raising my rent. 86 problems. But the 87th problem is that I'm allowing all this dukkha to arise out of those 86 problems. That's just my life.
Yeah.
That's the 87th problem.
Okay.
That's the one that we can work with.
Awakening.
And one other comment that seems coming from a philosophical background I should introduce here, because I think it's an example of Western thought trying to address this sense of universality around the individual that we all are and the way we perceive things. And it's John Rawls' theory of justice. So it's a great example of how Western thought can bring in the sense of the universal. And the problem we have with a system like capitalism, which by its nature creates great differences, is that then people are taking action based on their position, their individual position within that overall matrix, so that the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and so on. Rawls, in his theory of justice, said we should be making these kinds of societal decisions based on what we would wish for people. And I don't know, take yourself out of the mix. So it's also got that Buddhist element of no self. I don't know what position I'm going to occupy in society. Not having that awareness, how would I opt to select a policy on healthcare? I don't know if I'll have insurance or not. I don't know if I'll be healthy or have health issues. That's all unknown. So now that's what creates the universal. And you end up then, from a perspective of the universal, making decisions like that. So it was a neat way of addressing what I think James was talking about, of what sort of society would we create. And it doesn't have to be a Buddhist society, but I think it does have to be a society that addresses the universal.
Yes.
Rather than being driven by the particular. And so that those with wealth, with power, are able to just continue to aggrandize their position.
Yeah.
So I kind of always like to strip Buddhism out of it. I think we have an important voice to add to it, but the solution transcends any of the isms.
Even though, if as I hear you talk about it, and I don't know his writings or his work, but ultimately, by taking yourself out of it, as you said, it becomes very Buddhist.
Right, because you're practicing no self. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Exactly.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So we left off at 60. And Pima's translation is, perhaps we'll claim that by our wealth we live, and living gather merit, dissipating evil. But if we are ruthless for the sake of gain, it's evil we gather, dissipating merit. I think this is what we were just talking about indirectly in a way. It struck me as I read this that by comparison to much of the rest of the world, we are all rich. I know we don't feel that way because, of course, we're told we're not by advertising and other things. But you don't have to go very far in the world away from many developed countries to find out what it's like to really be poor. And that doesn't mean that everybody who doesn't have a lot isn't happy. It was one of the great lessons. I spent 2 years in Iran in the Peace Corps. And it was one of the lessons that I learned there, which was meeting villagers who had very little, but were relatively happy. I don't mean they didn't suffer. They certainly had issues around health sometimes and other things that our wealth brings us. But it was an object lesson in how much we're told that we don't have enough. And this is, and what Pelton points out from this is that even if we engage in multiple positive actions, such as making offerings, charitable contributions, and the like, to accumulate merit and purify our negative karma, but then we become angry or irritated when things get in the way of our accumulating more, any merit is dissipated and evil is increased. We live in a country that tells us we have to keep accumulating. And that in and of itself, I think oftentimes runs in the very face of the things we believe. What's enough? Well, everybody's got a different answer to that. But it becomes very easy, even when you're doing good things, to become angry at people or things that get in the way. And that takes away, and what Shantideva is saying to us here is, when you do that, it takes away the good from what you've just done. That it acts as a counterbalance. In 61, he says, What use then will our lives have been when all is so degenerate and spoiled? What use is there in living such a life when evil is the only consequence? What use will our lives have been when the only real reason for living, the purification of evil and the accumulation of merit, has been ruined? When merit has been exhausted and there has been a great increase in negativity? That's the question that Peldon asks to this. If when others slander us, we claim our anger is because they harm themselves, how is it we do not resent their slander when it is aimed at someone else? I mean, that's kind of a gotcha. We do, at least human nature is to do that all the time. We don't necessarily react if someone's slandering someone else, unless it's someone we care about or know about. We just we may recognize it as what it is, but don't get very upset by it, as opposed to when it's slandered on us. It could be argued that if we patiently put up with all kinds of unpleasant speech, other people will entertain wrong ideas about us and will criticize us. Since we are bodhisattvas, we know that the person who is slandering will destroy their own merit and cause painful consequences for themselves. Pelton asks that if we resent their criticism and unpleasant speech, how is it that we don't feel the same resentment when the person slanders someone else? Going on to 63, if we bear with such antipathy, remarking that it is due to other factors, why are we impatient when they slander us? Emotion, after all, has been the cause of it. So again, he's getting back to this idea of, you feel things, but you choose then how you respond. We may feel that the criticism and negative words that are pointed at someone else are warranted by their behavior. But how is this different? Regardless of the behavior, it arises out of causes and conditions. When people say negative, critical things, it is dependent on negative emotions, which they have no control over. Pelton says, when others dislike us, when they create obstacles to our success, when they insult us to our face or slander us behind our back, we should take pleasure in cultivating patience. Sounds good. I have to remember that one, and that's one I need to practice a bit. I don't know that I always do. Shantideva goes on to 664 then. Oh, please, Dave. Yeah, sorry.
Because that's an important point that gets made that I know,
Yes.
especially it seems to me the Tibetans may excel at pointing to this fact that we should view those that oppose us or take negative views of us as being benefactors.
Yes.
And I think that there's such truth to that if we could just bring our minds around to seeing it in that light, that it's causing me to take that backward step and look at why am I getting so upset?
This is the obstacle.
Yeah, so this sums up a lot of the texts that we've been looking at here, which is why I wanted to make sure we're clear on this, is that we don't, rather than immediately getting angry, see that as something positive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's raw material for our practice.
Yes.
There are teachers. There's teachers everywhere.
Yeah.
Dharma gates.
Yeah. In fact, speaking of teachers, I mean, that's a teaching methodology to, push back at a student. The koan I talked about in terms of the same response given by two different students. And that's kind of both the favorable and the unfavorable are teaching moments. How do you respond to that? If you're glowing because of the favorable, that's also. But the negative one, we naturally go. Rather, you could do a deep bow, say thank you. You've given not just the substance of the teaching, but the fact that it was just could be seen as an attack on you.
Yeah.
That's such a deep, profound teaching. Contain the kernel of that.
Yeah.
To be able to see it.
Absolutely. My ending comment about that had more to do with how hard I find that to do than how important it is to do it. It certainly is. Oh, absolutely. 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 And I don't always respond to people that say negative things to me with "thank you, teacher," but
But we need to have that in our heart.
yes, needs to be in our heart, even if we don't say it. Absolutely. I totally agree. Anything else? Okay. 6 to verse 64. Even those who vilify and undermine the sacred doctrine, images, and stupas are not proper objects of our anger. The Buddhas themselves are untouched thereby. This was a very personal lesson to me that I learned a long, long time ago. I mentioned that I've been in the Peace Corps in Iran. One of the opportunities I had was because I was teaching, we traveled across Afghanistan by bus in 1971. And somewhere I heard about the two Buddhas in Bamiyan, which is a city in Afghanistan. I have no idea where I heard about them, had no idea why we went to see them even, but because we had to fly by plane through, literally through the Hindu Kush, which is the foothills to the Himalayas, and landed in this wonderful valley. There were two large Buddhas carved into the side of a mountain. One was 75 feet tall, one was 120 feet tall. The reason I'm telling this story is when I was there, I felt there as much as I had the opportunity to travel, there was a very special feeling about that place. There was a tremendous peace I felt there that I never felt. I've never felt anyplace else. I really have not. The Buddhas were there. There were caves carved into the side of the mountain where the monks used to live. Ultimately, in the early 2000s, the Taliban blew those two Buddhas up. And I was early in my practice, and it was like somebody punched me in the stomach. And I started reading, and what I read was very much similar, the same message as this. The Buddhas are not harmed by this. So why are you upset? Everything changes. And this is the product of causes and conditions. And it was a lesson to me. It was probably the first time I saw some of this in a bigger context of than I had seen it in the past, of nations and other people functioning by karma. I'm still very sad that those Buddhas were lost. They were just historically, there was no face. There was a chin, and then there was an L shape. There were no hands. The story is, whether apocryphal or not, that those were originally gold. And so they were taken and melted down. But despite all of that, it was a very special place. And it was a first lesson to me about those. Everything does change. And destruction of those doesn't really affect the Buddha. And ultimately doesn't really affect Buddhism.
A mandala.
I'm sorry?
The great mandala.
Yes. Yeah. Next verse. And even if our teachers, relatives, and friends are now the object of aggression, all derives from actors just explained. This we should perceive and curb our wrath. Shantideva here moves from his teachings, from the teachings and sacred images to those close to us, teachers, relatives, and friends. He tells us that to exercise patience if they are ridiculed, criticized, or even robbed or physically harmed. Peldon talks about understanding that it's their karma that summons these actions by their aggressors. And Pema Chodron reminds us that, like us, the aggressors are the victims of their cliches. And if we become outraged in response to them, we become their mirror image. We have instructions for working with these emotions, and she points out that they don't. If we know how hard it is to practice patience, even when we have this, it should make us more open-minded towards our adversaries and help to curb our wrath. It's one of the things that I've thought about capital punishment for a long time. And that is, how does that make us different from the person who's committed the crime? I mean, we justify those things in various ways, but how does that make us different? Yeah.
And talking about karma, it sounds like those people that are our relatives, our friends, or whatever, are suffering because of the wrath of others. I'm thinking it's not so much the particular karma, but maybe the universal. It's a societal kind of karma that's happening that's causing the suffering to flow. My grandmother didn't have anything to do with the evil that was going on in Hitler's heart when she suffered from it. And I'd like to think it wasn't really her karma, but it was the karma of everything going on in her society that brought it to that point where so many suffered.
Well, it dawns on me that, like it or not, we are part of the karma of the United States. And what's going on right now is our karma, in the sense of the larger karma of the way things. The other thing that this brought to mind, if none of you have read, if any of you haven't read, I should say, the letter that was written by Renee Nicole Good's wife, please do. It is about this very thing. It's a very loving, forgiving, and understanding. And that doesn't mean that whether she's a Buddhist or not, she certainly sounds like one. Let's put it that way. And God knows she's a Bodhisattva. But please do read it. It's online. It's a couple pages long. James, did you just send us a link for that? Is that what came up? I got something with your name and a link on it.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the meeting. That's the link to the article.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. If anyone needs it, James just sent us to send it to us. So, definitely worth reading, and very powerful. Anything else? 66, verse 66 says, beings suffer injury alike from lifeless things as well as living things. So why be angry with the latter? Rather, let us simply bear with harm. The commentary is that the animate and inanimate are both conditioned and both empty of self. They both can inflict harm. So why do we choose animate objects as the target of our anger? Pima adds, we don't hold grudges against fallen branches. We'd be good to have the same equanimity towards aggressive people. And based on what we talked about before, see them as a teacher. See them as helping us with our own obstacles. Verse 67, some do evil things because of ignorance. Some respond with anger, being ignorant. Which of them is faultless in his acts? To whom should error be attributed? So we see that people commit evil deeds out of ignorance. Other people who don't have compassion respond with anger. and retaliate out of ignorance, which one of them is without guilt? Pima says they're in the same boat. Our self-righteous anger can be one of the hardest kinds for us to deal with. Certainly, I think it is one of the things that can be triggered by all of the events that are going on right now. When you see the cruelty, when you see the lies, when you see all of those things, there's certainly among the anger that gets triggered is certainly a good deal of self-righteous anger. At least there is in me. And again, definitely something to work with, something to look at, something to sit with. Verse 68 says, rather, why did I do evil in the past? What caused, I'm sorry. Why did I do evil in the past that caused me harm at others' hands? All that happens is the fruit of karma. Why then should I grow angry? All derives from the actor's again, going back to my background as a psychiatrist, one of the things that I really have come to see and understand about karma is when we continue to do, I'll use the psychiatric or psychological word, dysfunctional things that are not in our best interest, or things that are in violation of the precepts or the Four Noble Truths, they accumulate too. And I think what we too often don't see is if we continue to practice those things, they take us in the other direction. They're not just neutral, they accumulate as well. And that's really what karma is about, is those poor intentions accumulate and affect us in the same way that our positive intentions, and not in the same way, in the opposite way, that our positive intentions and practice help us. Shantideva is reflecting on the consequences again. And Pema Chodron says, this person and I have a karmic debt. I could respond in a way that erases the debt and benefits us both, or I can keep the cycle of misery going. The choice is up to me. I think that's so important. And I think that is the essence of what we're trying to do here, is to see those negative things coming at us. As Glenn asked, how do we see them? Well, we have to keep, we keep working at them. We keep working at them as part of our practice, day to day. And the choice is up to us. And verse 669 is, "This I see, and therefore, come what may, I'll hold fast to the virtuous path and foster in the hearts of all an attitude of mutual love." So Shantideva says there can be no justification for hatred, and that he will devote himself to fostering an attitude of mutual love. He declares that, come what may, he will not be resentful when others do harm to his relatives or his loved ones. He will not get angry, but will persevere in virtuous ways, calming the resentment that exists between his friends and his enemies. And he will do this to foster in the hearts of everyone an attitude of mutual love that, that banishes all hatred and anger. I think he's talking about living by vow. He's talking about what Shohaku talks about. Every day, making a small step. We vow to make a step in the right direction every day. But of course, we can only do that if we're aware of the things that he's asked us about and talked about. Yeah, James.
I had a question about Pema's response to part of the text, and this is in 6.64, where Shantideva, at least in this translation, writes, "The sacred doctrine, images, and stupas are not the proper, even those who vilify and undermine the sacred doctrine, images, and stupas are not the proper object of our anger." So to me, that means that perhaps there are proper objects of our anger, and I know I'm making a little bit of a leap there, but Pema responds and says perhaps we feel we could justify anger if someone harms the teachings or sacred images. So I'm wondering, kind of what your take on that. Like, is Pema sort of interpreting that to mean that anger is never justified? Or is she like what I kind of pick up from the text from Shantideva, that there are proper objects of anger, but that the ones who, vilify and undermine the, doctrine, images, and stupas are not the proper objects?
The key, I think, to what you're asking is the word objects. I think, and I'm gonna take. This may be splitting hairs a little bit, but what I hear in this is that we're all going to be angry, righteously and unrighteously. Anger is a reaction. We feel emotions in reaction to something. The question is, do we then point that anger? It's what we do with that anger toward that object. I mean, the example I used to give patients of mine about how emotions work is, if you're standing in line and somebody backs up and stomps on your foot, you're going to be angry, right? The first thing's going to happen in your mind is you're going to be angry. But if the person says, "Oh my God, I'm sorry, I didn't, I just fell or whatever," you'll let it go in all likelihood if you weren't hurt too bad. However, if that person then immediately steps on your foot again, you may not let go of it the second time. And you will start to focus on, were they just, are they just being careless? Were they, did they really want to do this? Were they not thinking what, then the mind starts going. But that's all after the anger's already there. And it is that second part that we're dealing with. You're going to feel the anger. You'll feel the anger about, there are righteous things to be angry about. All of us should be angry about a lot of things that are going on right now. But what are we going to do with it? How are we going to use that anger toward the object? And I think what's being said here is that's where we need to make a decision about how we're going to do that. That's the self-righteous anger. This is about me.
Yeah, I get it. And that's what I pick up that Shantideva is meaning, and it kind of makes sense with other Buddhist teachings, well, psychology and stuff too, that emotions a lot of times arise on their own, and that anger can be used as an sort of using emotions in skillful means to further what matters, what we care about. But Pema's response is seeming to indicate that there's no justification for anger. And she says the Buddhas themselves would not get upset. In fact, they would feel only compassion. So it seems to contradict what Shantideva is saying, and what we're sort of trying to get from it.
Yeah, I have in my notes, I've summarized it, so let me go back to what actually said here.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, she's.
And she does go on to say a little, which might inform the discussion. How can we presume to get self-righteous on their behalf? So I think, kind of what you indicated, that if it comes from a place of self-righteousness, then it's kind of misguided. It's not the proper object of our anger. But if we can sort of see how it arises, in, the three poisons that are across everybody, all have the propensity for that, then it can be kind of used, maybe as fuel if it's pointed in the right direction.
Well, I think that's exactly right. I mean, it can either motivate us to take positive actions, or it can motivate us to respond in kind. The mirror, if I respond to anger with anger, am I not just the mirror image? And as the one verse says before that. But that's my understanding of what she means here.
Okay.
I realize we're past 11:30 here. I apologize. Any other comments?
The only thing, and I'm conscious of the time too, so
Okay.
I'll definitely keep this brief, but as we wrap up at this
Dean,
point,
wait one second. James, I'm going to move the speaker closer to where in the center of things. I want to see if you can hear better. Give me one.
Should work well. Am I coming through okay, James? Maybe not.
Maybe
no,
not.
it sounds like the speaker that's active, or the microphone that's active, is just the one on the laptop.
Say that again.
Say it again.
I said
Joe.
it sounds like the only microphone that's active is the one on the laptop, not the external microphone.
All right.
We're hearing you through the external.
Oh, interesting.
Dean sounds further away than Joe.
It sounds further away than it was.
Dean sounds further away than Joe.
Okay, that's interesting.
Well,
Well, sounds like we have technical problems to work out here. I thought maybe that would be a simple solution, but
Is Dean
not
in the
so.
kitchen?
I'm sorry.
Is Dean in the kitchen?
yeah, I started work practice early.
John, you have to be careful not to keep your paper over top of the microphone on the laptop.
I don't. Where's?
Well,
Okay, no, it shouldn't be. Anyhow, yes, please.
And just in closing, this issue of karma and how we respond to things. I had just a couple of days ago had a discussion with somebody who was talking about their having read the book written by Mary Trump some years back about the Trump family and the dysfunctionality throughout that family, thanks to Donald's father, Fred Trump, and what the eldest son, Fred Jr., had to go through because of that. So, and how that, speaking about karma, we can look at someone like Donald Trump and recognize, well, you know, there are causes and conditions that create such a damaged individual. I mean, I'm very grateful I didn't go through the kind of childhood and young adulthood that he went through.
Absolutely.
So the issue becomes one of then his actions ripple out into a society that also has their own karmic conditioning, which leads them to maybe spend inordinate amounts of time on social media and to be accepting of certain messages that come through the whole 9 yards, all this coming together. So in terms of how we respond, is it with anger? Or is it with, and this is where I think Christianity and Buddhism can come together very nicely, this message of love. Love from a Christian standpoint, or loving kindness and compassion from the standpoint of Buddhism. That this is, in fact, what the world needs, is rather than having just explosions of anger here, anger there, that makes me pissed off, and so on and so forth. But rather, just to recognize that's the core of what this tradition is trying to carry forward, is this understanding of karma, and to rather than reacting with anger, to have compassion. But we need to respond. So it's not just saying, well, yeah, that's the way, that's just karma. We can take that kind of a response. But to the way we respond, to let the anger drop off from it, and just practice according to the Eightfold Path, according to the 7 awakening factors and the 6 paramitas and all of that, so that we can be a force for healing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think, maybe a nice way to sum up this whole section on karma, anger, so on.
Anger breeds anger, compassion breeds compassion, typically.
And that's why it's so important we're out there doing it. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's chant out. May our intention equally penetrate every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it.
John, don't shut it down.
Okay.
It sounds like Joe might be coming over to look at the mic.
Yeah. The
There's a drop down next to the microphone where you can select the mic input.
right. and
Wondering.
it does register. I check it every day, and it says we're both on the external. But obviously, I'm hearing you through the external, but it's not the mic on the external. It's not working.
Let me get out of your
Yeah,
way here.
interesting.
And
And then you can.
The other place to check, Joe, is at least on my version of Windows, in the next to the clock. It's like the little, utility tray. On mine, it shows like the Wi-Fi, a speaker, and then like a leafy
Yeah.
symbol just to the left of the clock.
I'm on a Mac, so it's a little bit
okay.
different. But yeah, everything on this side is registering. But something is wrong with the device because, can you see this?
Yeah.
Typically, this black area, every time I speak, it flutters with blue. So you can tell that it's working on this end. The mic has that response.
Gotcha.
But that little blue flash that you just saw.
Right.
And for some reason, it's a few weeks back, it's sporadic. Sometimes it works, and sometimes, most of the time, it does not. When it works, you can see it flashing. And I think I'm going to take it home right now until next Thursday and play around with it and see why it's not working right.
Okay. That sounds good. I wonder if if there's like an app or a utility or website or something where you can flash the firmware, give it a firmware update.
Yeah, I'll check that. I didn't think of that.
Does it have it's interesting that it worked and then it stopped working, but
Yeah.
OSs all the time get updates too, so it could be a new-ish incompatibility. Is there a model number on that device?
Well, there it goes.
Whoops. Hey,
Maybe
if it doesn't
works
work,
now.
take a hammer. Yeah.
Does it work? No, I don't think so. It's unchanged. Yeah. So
Okay, well, thanks for
thanks
taking
for
a
the
look at it.
feedback. I appreciate it. It'll give me a little incentive to dig into it now.
Okay, sounds good. And
'Cause I
I
think the sessions do go much better when it's working, right? Because it is a very good speaker.
yeah, when I've connected before and it was working, it's like, it's really great. It's
Yeah.
like seamless.
Yeah.
And I can hear, like I said, if I turn the volume up and then the speaker in front of the laptop talks and then it's like really loud then.
Yeah.
So yeah, cool. Thanks for taking a look at it.
And thanks for that link. I'm going to click on it right now so I have it stored on my laptop.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if I got out of the program, how I would come back to it and find that link. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I know on Zoom it stores them locally, a transcript of the chat, but I don't know about in Meet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can also send it to you in email if that's easier.
Would you? I'm
Sure.
having a little bit of trouble. Oh, here we go. I'm not coming up with. Ah, there it is. There it is. Okay, I've got it. All right. Are you still there, James?